All right, so these are the problems that we're actually going to be doing. And so once again, we're starting with the trinomial, right? And we want to try to get to something that looks like this, right? We want to get a product of two binomials to get to that trinomial, okay? So remember that in order to get the w squared, we would have had to have a w here and a w here, right? W multiplied by w is w squared. Now, in order to get something here and here, we'd have to multiply, in order to get an 8 here, we'd have to multiply this by this, right? So we need two numbers that we can multiply to get 8. But let's list out the factors of 8. And this is something you don't have to do, but it might be helpful. So the factors of 8 are 1 and 8 and 2 and 4, right? The next one would be 3, but that doesn't work. 3 doesn't go into 8. And then once I get to 4, that's already here. So that means I'm done with my list, okay? So you can always make a list of factors if you get stuck, okay? So now I need two factors I can multiply to get 8, right? So I could choose 1 and 8, or I can choose 2 and 4. How do I know which one to choose? Well, remember that this 6 is another clue. So this is one clue. This is another clue. So we want numbers we can multiply to get 8 that we can add to get 6. So which are those? That's right, the 2 and the 4, okay? So that's what you do is you find numbers you can multiply to get that third number in the trinomial that you can add or subtract depending on what this sign is to get the middle number, okay? So numbers we can multiply to get 8 that we can add to get 6, 2 and 4, okay? Now let's get the signs right. So this tells us the signs are going to be the same, right? And this tells us the sign of the bigger number. So the bigger number is 4, and the signs are going to be the same, okay? So this is the sign of the bigger number, and this tells you if the signs are the same or different, okay? So that's really all I got to do. I just put the plus 2 here, plus 4 here, and that's it. We're done, okay? All right, so that's basically how you use your clues, right? So these numbers are clues, and these signs are clues. So make sure that you pay attention to what they are. All right, let's take a look at number 8. So I want to end up with something like this, right? So since I have an m squared here, I know that this and this have to multiply to get that, right? First times first, m times m gives us m squared. So then now I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to get a 14. So this multiplied by this needs to be positive 14. So since 14 has multiple factors, I'm just going to make another list. I'm going to say, okay, 14, it's 1 and 14, 2 and 7, right? So I'm looking now, okay, which one is it going to be? I look to the middle number to tell me, right? So I want numbers I can multiply to get 14 that I can add to get 9, right? So numbers I can add to get 9 are 2 and 7, right? 1 and 14, if I added those, I would get 15. So I'd have 15m in the middle, right? If I put the 1 and the 14 in there. So it's not 1 and 14. Okay, now let's get the signs right. So if this is the sign of the bigger number, right? So that means the 7 is going to be negative this time. And this tells us the signs are the same. When that's positive, that means we had to have the same sign times the same sign to get a positive, right? So either a negative by a negative or a positive times a positive. So since the bigger number is negative, the other one has to be the same in order to get a positive 14. So that means we're going to have negative 2, negative 7, okay? And so negative 2 multiplied by negative 7 is positive 14, and negative 2 plus negative 7 is negative 9. So that works out. And you can FOIL it if you're not sure, right? You can always FOIL it all the way and just make sure that it works if you want to check your answer. All right, number 10. So here, once again, I have a trinomial. I want to make it look like this. Okay, so think about what's going to go in this front location. And if you guessed A, you're right. A by A is A squared. So now we need to figure out, okay, what's going to go here, what's going to go here. So we're looking at a 6. So we need numbers that we can multiply to get 6, right? Because this times this is how we're going to get this. And so if we're not sure, we can list out the factors of 6, 1 and 6, 2 and 3. This one's a tricky one because we're like, okay, well, both of them can give us a 5, right? 6 minus 1 is 5, and 2 plus 3 is 5, right? But here's where we need to look at our clues. So we found numbers we can multiply to get 6. Now we want them to subtract to get 5. So we want numbers that have a difference of 5, and so we're going to pick the 1 and the 6. All right, so that's a tricky one because it could have gone either way. If this was a plus, we would have picked the 2 and the 3. Okay. All right, so now remember, we look to this sign. This tells us the sign of the bigger number, so the bigger number is 6, so it's going to be positive, the same as this. And then this tells us the signs are different, right? So that means we're going to put the other one is going to be different, right? The bigger one's positive, the smaller one's going to be different, so it's negative. So now I'm going to put a -1, positive 6, and now we solve the puzzle, right? So if we fold this out, we would get a times a squared, -1 times a times 6, 6a, 6a minus 1a is how we get the positive 5a, right? And then finally, last times last, -1 times 6 is -6, okay? So, little mental math to check our work there. And then the last example is, that on this page at least, is this one here. So we know it's a trinomial, so we're going to try to get something like this. Put an x here. And this time I'm looking for numbers I can multiply to get 12 that I can subtract to get, what's the number in front here? If you don't see a number, that means it's an invisible 1, right? So I want numbers I can multiply to get 12 that I can subtract to get 1. And that's how we read that. So let's list out the factors of 12. We have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. So which set of those, which pair, gives us a difference of 1? That would be 3 and 4, right? So then this is going to be the sign of the bigger number. So that means our bigger number is negative in this case. This tells us the signs are different, right? If this is negative, we had to have different signs here and here to multiply to get a negative. So that means the 3 must be different than the 4. So the 3 has to be positive. So we put those in here, plus 3, minus 4. It really doesn't matter the order, right? You could put the -4 first and then the +3. And that goes for all the other ones here. So you can write it like this, and this would be also full credit. Okay, but anyway, that's our final answer. And that's how we factor simple quadratics.